Hello there, fellow gamers. My name is Ashes, and I welcome you all to the channel. Today we are playing Red Dead Redemption number 2, and this is another reading ASMR video. So we're going to be continuing our reading of Far Cry Absolution, and we are on Chapter 2, Part 4, I believe. Yes, Chapter 2, Part 4. Just had a look to confirm what part we're on. So, just before I started the recording of this video, I was having a look through the book to see how long Chapter 2 is. So we're currently on page 67, and I was flicking through the pages until I got to Chapter 3, and I believe, yes, Chapter 3 is page 117, and we're on page 67. It's a very long chapter, so that there aren't a lot of chapters in this book, but oh my goodness. So we're going to be on Chapter 2 for quite a few videos. So there's going to be Chapter 2 part 4, part 5, part 6, part 7, I don't know, probably part 8, part 15. No, it should be that far, but we'll read a few pages per video. So I'm going to open my book now, and we're going to take the front cover off. And now, let's get to the page we are on, and we're going to be continuing. So, I believe we when we left our story last video, we were, I think Will, I think he was having a dream. Is it Will? Let me just double check that. I think it is. Yeah, I think so. Or is it Lonnie? I can't remember who. But, yeah, no, it's Will. Yeah, definitely Will. Yeah, he was having a dream of his old life with his child. So we're going to be continuing from there. Now, we're going to start from the last paragraph that we finished on last video, just so we can remind ourselves of what's happening. So, let's begin. He was at the door as if he had simply found it waiting there, but each time he turned the knob, it would not unlock, and he could hear her screaming for him, asking where he was, asking for him to come and find her. He kept turning the knob in his hand, and it was doing nothing, and he knew without a doubt that something horrible was happening that he could not stop. That even in his home there was nothing he could do to help her. He woke with a start, and he could not stop coughing. It was still an hour before the dawn would come, but he could see the lights building in the east. He held a hand to his mouth and racked his lungs and felt something stir within him and come loose. He spit it from his mouth and sat staring at it. Mucus, dark and evil looking, there on the ground like some Precambrian life form brought forth from within the mud. After an hour he was still awake, just lying there watching above as the sun chased the last remaining stars from out of the sky. On the ground beside him, dark as a pool of tar, was the blackened and drying blood of an Orclear or some other wickedness he had brought up from somewhere deep inside. The boy woke her in the morning with a hand held out across her shoulder, and as she opened her eyes, he backed away toward the fire, and he sat again and stirred whatever it was he had been making there in the pot. His father sat beside him, both of them there like they had never left, still wearing the same clothes and sitting in the same place. Sorry. Estabas hablando, the father said. She shook her head to show she did not understand, then looked toward the boy and waited. You were talking in your sleep, the boy said, using the ladle. He scooped dark liquid from within the pot, then put it in a bowl and handed it to her. He was back at the fire again when she looked up. She sniffed the bowl, blew on it, then put the liquid to her lips and tasted it. Coffee, she said. Gracias? Oh, gracias. Yes, that's thank you. De nada, the father said. The boy nodded, dipping the ladle again and serving his father before he served himself. When she was finished with the bowl, she could see the loose grinds at the bottom, and she thought about the cowboy stories the old ones who came into the bar used to tell about reading the grinds to tell the future. And though she stared down for a minute or more, she could not tell a thing from what she saw. She rose, tipping the bowl over and using her fingers to clean out the grinds. The bruise was still there on her thigh when she squatted down within the trees. She ran her hand across it, pressing against it to feel the tenderness of the skin. It was purple, going blue to yellow at the edges, and when she was done, she lifted her trousers and came out from under the trees, buttoning up her jeans. The boy had saddled up the horse, and he was waiting for her. You'll go to find your brother now. I'm going to try. The boy offered her his hand. I can give you a ride as far as the high ridge, he said. The church is beyond another few miles, and you may be able to see the smoke, but I still think it is a bad idea. She looked at him, then took his hand and pulled herself up behind him. The father came forward now. He held the chrome 38 in the flat palm of his hand, like some offering. It was in your bedding, the boy said, looking down at the gun in his father's hand. She looked at the father, then looked to the boy. She thanked him and took the revolver. It was my father's, she said. Then, realizing she knew the word in Spanish, she said to him, "Di ma padre. ¿Dónde está tu padre?" Dead. A car accident. The father clucked his tongue and shook his head. He offered his condolences. The boy started the horse up across the field. Mary May, with her hands about the waist of the boys as they went, and the sheep parting around them like whitecaps seen in an ocean storm. When she looked back toward the small campground, she could only see the rise of smoke, dying now as somewhere down there the boy's father prepared for another day. The boy climbed the ridge, moving the horse one way and then another on the path that Mary May could see had been used before. When they came to the top, the boy slid down and helped her from the horse. He pointed out the valley below and showed her where the church was. Down across the valley, over a few hills, and further on to where the lake lay. Your brother is all you have, isn't he? Yes, she said. Will lost the trail coming up the avalanche chute. Several times he had to backtrack and find it before he could go on, only to lose it again. When they came out on top of the ridge, he could see it would be no help. The wind swept rock barren of any sign. He walked the edge of the ridge and looked down over the precipice at the rocks below. Broad fans of talus and broken rock spread across the slope into the river valley further on. It disappeared among the sedge, and then further on he saw the thick darkness again of trees and brush. When he came back, walking along the ridge the opposite way, he could see the white backs of the sheep moving in the mountain field opposite them from where he stood. They were high on the mountain, and he watched a rider move through them, seeing how the sheep began to part to let the rider through. That's where I'd go, Will said. Cold and lost. I'd go to where the people are. He looked to where Lonnie was standing. He pointed out the rider and the sheep. He took up his rifle and passed the scope across the field, then handed the rifle over to Lonnie. I count 2 men, Will said. I don't see Mary May. Lonnie took a long look through the scope, then handed it back to Will. That's where you'd go? That's where I'd go, Will said. By mid-morning they had crossed the river and climbed up the mountain into the field. The sheep moved about them as they walked, and the 2 herders now stood to watch them come. Buenos dias, the older of the 2 said. He had come forward a bit from the dead fire pits and watched them as they walked closer. Will raised a hand and returned the greeting, afterward turning and to look back over his shoulder at Lonnie. You speak any Spanish? Lonnie shook his head. He was watching the 2 herders and he looked to Will now. The only Mexicans I ever knew were in prison, and they might as well have been in another country. By the way, the place was divided up. Will looked back toward the man. You speak any English? The man looked backwards at the boy, who Will could now see must have been the man's son. The son just stood there looking at the two of them, and he shook his head. Estamos buscando, Will said. He was trying to think up what to say, but he didn't know the words. He had worked a few summers in the fields to the east where he had come back from the war. But it was a long time ago, and even then he had not spoken much Spanish. Estamos buscando for someone, he said, making a wide and somewhat futile gesture of the surrounding world. Again, the father looked toward the boy. The boy shrugged. These guys don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Lonnie said. He went to stand at the fire and looked down upon the blackened rocks. Ask them if they have any fucking food or liquor, he said, looking over at Will, not even bothering to ask the father or the son. I'd kill one of those sheep if it meant we had something to bring back out of here for John and the rest at the church. Iglesia? The father asked. He raised a hand to his chin and determined, stroking the long beards both Will and Lonnie wore, along with all the rest of the men of Eden's Gate. Yes, Will said. Iglesia, both of us. He pointed to Lonnie, then brought his hand back and put it to his chest. Iglesia. Ask them about the food, Lonnie said again. He had begun to walk around a small camp, and he was towing at the supplies there and the various camp where. The boy was watching them. Hell, ask them if they have any liquor. Maybe we'll get lucky. Will raised a hand to his mouth. Comedia? He asked. He was speaking to the father, but he brought his eyes around on the son. No, the father said. No, Lonnie said. Tell them they're being rude. He spoke to Will, but he looked now to the boy who was standing a few feet off. You're being fucking rude, Lonnie said. You understand, you motherfucking mute? Lonnie leaned down, looked in under the trees, and started to walk away toward where a horse was tethered. I'm going to take their horse and take their sheep and ride the fuck out of here. I'm done with whatever this is we're doing. The boy came around and stood between Lonnie and the horse. In his hand was a small knife, and he was holding out about waist high in front of him. Okay folks, so we're gonna end the video here. So it's getting quite interesting, this story. I'm quite enjoying it. I hope you are too. Do let me know how my reading is, my voice, because this is an ASMR. I'm hoping this is relaxing for you, but for now we're going to end it here. Until next time, take it easy, and I will see you all in the next one.